Welcome to Well Smoothie, the show dedicated to helping you get what you want most out of life. The earlier in life you decide what you actually want, the better chances you have of actually getting it. The problem is that I'm seeing is most people don't know what they really want. Imagine having the clarity and direction like a Warren Buffett, following the markets from a super young age, or even practicing basketball every waking moment like a Kobe Bryant. What better recipes to follow in life than slurping knowledge from the world's most successful people? Right now, join me in blending up the life of billionaire hedge fund investor David Tepper. Despite being the richest owner in the NFL, most people have never heard of David Tepper. He randomly got on my radar one day. I was watching the NFL. I like to watch football, and they showed a press conference with some owner making all these controversial opinions, and I guess he was shaking up and creating waves in the league, and I said, who is this guy? So I started looking into him a little bit, and then that's how David Tepper really got on my radar. He's got a pretty interesting backstory, and really what I'm going to do today is highlight what he's done, what he's most known for, and then most importantly to you guys, and really the whole concept of the show is showing this is where he started, and this is the process. This is how he got to where he's at today. I feel like a lot of people just look at all these really famous people, successful people, and say, oh, they're just there, they got there, and it almost seems inconceivable how they did it. So I just want to highlight how he actually got there, as well as the recipe he followed, and then what can we learn from that so that we can all benefit. A couple notable achievements here. So he started his own hedge fund. We'll get into that a little bit later. His net worth is $12 billion as of February 2020. Not bad. And Forbes quoted, they said, David Tepper, arguably the greatest hedge fund manager of his generation. That's a pretty big honor. That's a pretty big title to be deemed by Forbes. And when I was reading up on him, for those of you guys who follow the markets or invest your own money, you have an idea of what returns are, capital gains. The last 20 years on average, he returned about 40% on average to his investors, which is crazy. That's inconceivable. This past year, 2019 to 2020, the S&P returned about 30%, and that was pretty historic, pretty big year for most people. And a lot of people probably felt like geniuses because they had decent returns, because you didn't really have to be very good to pick stocks that did well, because everything did well. Imagine doing 10% better and doing 40% every year on average for 20 years. Really hard to wrap your head around. So Appaloosa Management, that's his hedge fund. Assets under management was around $13 billion. Looks like there was around $20 billion at one point. That's a ton of money. And really what he's most known for is, along with his hedge fund and investing community, is being the owner of the Carolina Panthers. He bought the team for $2.3 billion in 2018. Pretty big sum of money. And something I thought was interesting in doing my research from him, you hear this and you think, wow, this guy's probably the smartest person ever. He's probably came from this unbelievable background. It was quoted in saying, and he said this, I'm just a kid from the streets of Pittsburgh who had to work my way through college. He wasn't some trust fund person. He wasn't given anything. He was from just a very average white collar, or blue collar rather, town in Pittsburgh. And he worked his way up and really got to where he's at here today. So I'm going to break down his childhood and how he got there. But quick bonus question for those of you who stay around to the end. Try and guess, what does he have on his desk that he always rubs prior to making a big investment? You're going to find that out at the end. It's going to shock you. David Tepper was born September 11th, 1957. He was the middle of three children. Lower middle class family in Pittsburgh, nothing out of the ordinary. His dad was an accountant. His mom was a school teacher. And something that he said that had a pretty profound impact on his life and his childhood was that he received quite a bit of abuse physically and emotionally from his father. So that must have been pretty tough on him. When he was giving his commencement speech at Carnegie Mellon, he started to tear up and say that his life goal would be to never treat his children like that. Pretty normal childhood. Outside of that, went to Pittsburgh for his undergraduate degree, got a degree in economics. From there, he got a job at Equibank as a credit analyst. So nothing too crazy, pretty entry-level job if you're in finance. From there, he went, after a couple years, got his MBA at Carnegie Mellon. And he said this is really what shaped his life into who he was today, as they gave him the tools for success. It had such an impact, he actually has donated $125 million to Carnegie Mellon It's named the Tepper School of Business. So if you guys are ever looking at a business school, Tepper School of Business could be the one for you. From there, his dream job was Goldman Sachs. So of course he applied to Goldman Sachs. He got rejected. So a guy like this, as you can see what he's done, at that time he got rejected. I'm sure that was tough on him. And I'm sure a lot of you guys, including myself, have applied to jobs and gotten rejected. And at the moment, it may seem like the end of the world, but obviously if you keep going, you never know what can happen. Rather than that, he got a job at Republic Steel. And this was pretty unconventional. Steel business wasn't doing great then. He said within 6 months, everyone in the company got a 7% pay deduction, which you never want to see. He said that all his MBA friends were like, Tep, what are you doing, man? Like, you're kind of wasting away. Like, not the best decision. And he actually was quoted in saying, in life, all the experience, get all the experience you can get. Always choose the experience over the paycheck. So that was pretty interesting. Worked there for a couple years and then ended up getting a job at Keystone Mutual Funds. This is when he really started to work on his investing acumen. From there, ended up getting into Goldman Sachs. Goldman was really when he started to make a name for himself. And within 6 months, he was named the head trader on a new unit, trading high-yield bonds. And he was there at Goldman for about 8 years and really started to make a name for himself on Wall Street. His whole goal was to make partner at the firm, and he kept getting passed up on partner. Essentially, he was asked by a partner to make a certain trade, and he perceived it to be unethical. He went to the law department and said, "This is what I'm seeing." And they said, it's fine," but he just wouldn't make the trade because he didn't feel right about it, and he kept getting passed up for promotion. So he said, "Okay, I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna start my own firm." And once he created Appaloosa Management, the rest is really history. He's been named one of the best traders of his generation. I'm pretty sure 1 year he was actually one of the highest earning hedge fund managers. He made over $1 billion in 1 year. A couple big notes that I saw in his life that I thought were pretty interesting was that in 2016, he moved his family from New Jersey to Miami. And at the time, he was reportedly the highest taxpayer in New Jersey. But he escaped to a safe haven in Florida where you don't have to pay income tax. Also in Texas, you don't have to pay income tax. That's where I'm at. Pretty nice. Something that was a major flex. So clearly he had some disdain to Goldman Sachs and the way he was treated. So he purchased a $43.5 million beachfront mansion in Long Island, and it belonged to one of his former boss's wife. And he literally bought the property and just demolished it and built an entire new house. And it seems like it could have been in retaliation of what happened in the past, but you never know. And then he was quoted in saying, "I am the animal at the head of the pack. I generally am. I either get eaten or I get the good grass." He really seems like an innovator. He seems like he really goes for it. His biggest trade was actually in 2008, 2009, right around the financial crisis. This is when Appaloosa Management really took the next step. He pretty much bet the entire company on stocks, or banks in particular, rebounding. He essentially bet that the United States wouldn't let big banks fail. And hindsight 2020 seems pretty clear cut, but at the time, I'm sure it was a super difficult trade. And he did it. And that year increased his assets by $10 billion. Answer to the bonus question right here. What did David Tepper keep at his desk as a good luck sign? He kept a pair of brass testicles that he would always rub before a massive trade. And he was said to do it because it lessened the tension. And when you're risking billions, you got to do something to lighten the takeaways I see here, guys, that could apply to all of our lives is we got to recognize we're in a country where anyone can make it. He's from a small town in Pittsburgh and worked his way up to being one of the richest people on the planet. So clearly anyone can do it if he's from that background and doing it. And his quote was, "In life, get all the experience you can. Always choose experience over the paycheck." So that's something I'm trying to ask myself is, what am I doing today that's building skills or setting myself up for what I want to do in the future? And I think it really just starts with asking yourself, what do I really want? And what do I got to do to get to that place? And I think David Tepper really exemplifies that in his whole career. Love to hear what you guys think in the comments below. Go ahead and jump down. I know a couple of you will have a couple things to say. So let me know what you think, and be on the lookout for the next episode of Wealth Smoothie.